Transmission is go. Underbase is live.
Hello ladies and gentlemen and welcome to the Underbase. My name is Adam88M and we're back with More Than Meets the Eye 39. Yes, Matt has taken a holiday after warmer climes, leaving me the task of dealing with an action-packed issue that casts a very different light on some very popular characters. But don't worry, whilst we go through this, it won't be my blathering that you'll be hearing. You'll actually hear some intellectual comments. And for that, I turn to my guests. Hello, Mr. Adam May. How are you, sir?
Hello, I'm all good. Thank you very much.
Cool. And hello, Mr. Chris McFeely. How are you, sir?
I won't stand for these lies that imply there's going to be intellectualism on this show.
There is.
How can you be so dishonest with your audience?
They've put up with me for long enough. They'll put up with me for a little bit longer. It's fine. So, gents, we have a couple of barnstorming covers to this issue. Cover A is the image of Sarus, which has been everywhere these past few weeks. Art by Alex, colours by Josh. The subs cover is Tarn, the book critic, about to give Megatron a very low Amazon rating. Art by Nick and colours by Josh. And the retail incentive cover is a classic propaganda-style poster of the DJD by Sarah Petra Durache. So, Adam, which one does the cons most justice?
Do you know what? I'm not super impressed by any of them this week, if I'm honest.
Okay.
I think the regular cover, I think you probably hit nail on the head. We've seen it too much. You know, you read it in the back of every issue, and it's kind of lost that wellness because it always feels a little bit over publicized. The subscription cover is really cool with the reflection of Tarn, but I don't know, something about the angle of it straight away put me off. It doesn't. I think it's a bit off.
Yep.
And the retailer incentive cover just doesn't do much for me, to be honest. It's kind of pretty colours, but I mean, the cover I have is the regular cover, so I'm going to go with that one because it's the one I have.
Okay. Chris?
I'm afraid I'm the complete opposite, actually. I think these are one of the nicest sets of 3 covers that I've seen on an issue of late, and that I'm very hard-pressed to pick the best between them. So,
well, you're wrong, sir. You're wrong.
Well, intellectualism will determine that you smell of poo. And and you can't touch me because I have a force field. So, well, no, I went with the Nick cover because I just liked it more. I think maybe I was a little. I mean, I'm very happy to see Sarus in this issue. He's portrayed very well, but maybe I was a little over familiar with it, like you say. But the Nick one just, I think, captured. I mean, you know, for all of the pomp and circumstance surrounding Sarus being in the comic, you know, he was the face of the cover. He for 2 months in advance. Last issue it said next Sarus, and he's just sort of there. You know, it's not about him or anything. He just happens to be. He fills a role just about anybody really could. Not that I'm criticizing the portrayal of the character because he does come off well, but the Nick cover was the one that did it for me. But the Durache cover is very nice as well. I mean, we have had our certainly our allotment of Soviet propaganda style posters in IDW's time. All hail Megatron. But
Yep.
this is a different kind of propaganda. You know, Sarah's done some very nice covers across the board for this month's retailer incentives. And
Cool.
I mean, I never get them because obviously it's hard to get a hold of them. But I have really liked the way over the last year that each month has just been given over to an artist to do a set of 3 incentive covers. I always look forward to seeing who the artist is for next month. And I think we know it's Naoto Tsushima for June, so I'm really looking to see what he comes out with.
It's nice bringing in a lot of new talent, which is always good to see.
And this issue being a great example.
Yeah. I've got to say it's the retail incentive cover for me. I just like the look of it. I just like how everyone is composed. Yes, you know, the bots are all sort of drawn to the same scale in the front, but I think that works wonderfully. And Tarn, it's almost foreshadowing a lot in the issue because it's not, here is the evil boogeyman. It's, here is, from some people's perspective, a hero, which is nice. So, the story. Once they were the most feared of all of Megatron's soldiers, and now, dun dun dun. A story by James Roberts, art by Hiato Sakamoto, colors by Joanna Lafuente, letters by Tom B. Long, coordination by Phase 6. Well done, Phase 6. And editor John Barber.
Phase 6 is the company run by Andrew Hall, also known as Hydra. He's a long-standing member of the fandom, but he's an American fan who lives and works in Japan. He worked at eHobby for a period of time there, and now he runs his own company, Phase 6, which has been responsible for coordinating the involvement of people like Hayato Sakamoto on this, and Naoto Tsushima and Sakamoto's involvement with this past BotCon and stuff like that.
Oh, fantastic.
That's good to know.
Yeah. Let's get this out of the way first. There was a bit of a hoo-ha about the artist on this issue because of previous. I know. Look, but there was a problem about his previous work. That is the way I believe that in that country there is a lot of work for comic artists in that field, and that is how many of them start out their career because that is a paid job that they can get. He is not translating any of that over into this issue. The tone of this issue reflects the audience, so it's not as if he's taking something else and kind of inserting it into it, unlike maybe some of the issues that Marvel and DC have had with the tone of an artist's content matching the audience, etc. Anything you guys want to
add? If you don't want to support it, that's your choice.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're missing out. I think a lot of the hatred is the product of active muckraking by people who blew 2 panels out of a comic book severely out of proportion because as Transformers comic book readers, they're simply not used to seeing elements like that in their comics. Not that I'm saying those elements are welcome or deserved or should have been in the BotCon comic, nor am I indeed saying that one should accept them and simply get on with accept them as the norm, because they're not. And of course, things only change by making your voice heard. But I do feel that the response was grossly out of proportion for what was in there. It was dumb and not funny, and I didn't like it myself, but I did feel it was way over the top. Some very unsavory elements of his past work in Japan were dug up, I firmly believe, as a result of people looking for something further to smear his name with because they were annoyed about that in the BotCon comic. And it comes down to, for me, a separation of art and creator.
Yep.
And knowledge that I certainly wouldn't want to be judged by any of the material I had created 10 or 15 years ago. I wouldn't want any professional work I had created to be judged against some of the dumb smutties. Look, let's get straight up here. Anybody who worked in the creative arts has experimented in their youth with smutty material. I did it. I'm not going to lie. When I was a teenager and drawing and writing and things, I did it. Yeah.
Well, as a cameraman in the biz, I shot stuff which was in the script, which was the exploitive scenes in a particular thriller or drama or etc. So I've sat there behind the camera when the obligatory shower scene has come up.
We're going down a very dark path here, boys. Very, very dark. So far, you're filming porn and Chris is drawing smut like as a teenager. So I'm going to play the guy on the fence here. I live in a bubble and I don't know this guy's work. I didn't know anything about this until you guys started talking about it, which shows how much research I put into the issue before today. Playing that role of somebody who doesn't know what all this is about, although I've put 2 and 2 together from what you guys have said, I don't really care. I'm just going to judge his art on this issue, and do I like it or don't like it?
Good stuff.
I mean, I don't think we want to go into any detail on the subject, but it does have to be highlighted because I don't feel like we can just leave it at he drew porn. We can't leave it at that. He drew bad porn. Okay? And I don't and I mean the vilest shit that the human mind can conceive. He was responsible for producing that. I think we all know what I mean when I say that. But it is drawing. No, I mean, no way condoning it. Let me make that very clear, because vital,
Yeah.
in the utmost. But and I don't want to wave my hands and shrug and go Japan, but to a certain extent, Japan. As Adam said, there's a values dissonance between the cultures, but regardless, this is whatever 10 or more years ago for him. I wouldn't want to be judged in any of the smutty material that I created, whether it was. I mean, I feel there's no difference whether you're doing it for a paycheck or whether you're doing it to do it. Although some people try and claim there is, I don't, and I know that certainly some of the stuff that I have seen be produced, fan works, from the audience that is saying a lot of this stuff, is exceptionally pornographic, and nothing that I feel 10 years from now that they would want any professional work they produce to be judged against.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, as Adam says, it's well in the past. It has no impact on what he's producing here. I have consistently enjoyed his output on Transformers comics. I was very excited whenever he came on to do this issue. He knocks it out of the fucking park, and I'm very happy to see more work from him.
Nice.
But if you don't agree, and if you cannot surmount that, if your morals are such that it is unforgivable to you, then so be it. And
there we go. Basically, folks, blame me, because I won't be about next time, so it'll be fine. Right, so folks, we start on a familiar scene for the DJD that chases over the traitor in their eyes is caught, and now the DJD are enacting its version of the J element, and Tarn is narrating. He notes the procedure, the routine, the music. The standard style is playing, Tarn noting some backgrounds about the composition. Apparently, Helex refers to it as the DJD's theme song. That and the note about the missing Voss give the first hint about the real tone of this issue. Oh, and by the way, Blip has the top of his head sawed off, his brain module pulled out, and rammed into his mouth. That he's still alive wins a bet for Tarn, because normally, if someone wakes up with their brain in their mouth and sees the people who put it there still standing in front of him, the first instinct is to start chewing. I wonder how many of the other Lost Light crew fell prey to their own teeth. Now that would have been a fitting end for Blip, because he was accused of starting a Spark Eater cult. But even though it's a cult of one, shortly to become none, Blip shows guts to the end, and when Tarn berates himself for mocking his victim in a cheap way, Blip is offered the chance for final words. Blip challenges Tarn to remove his faceplate. Take it off. Let me see you. You're a coward, Tarn. All you do is hide. Your real name, your real face. What exactly are you hiding from? And Tarn's response is to walk away, as Blip is blended through to Sarus, but narrates the reason why he wears the mask. It's not for secrecy. It's not for fear. It's not even for honor. He wears it so that when he allows the team to dispatch bots instead of him, nobody can see him close his eyes. Now, Chris, we have a seemingly typical scenario for the DJD at the start, but there's a hell of a lot of tweaks and nods here, both in script and art choices. What do you think of this setup?
Well, we saw this for the 3-page preview for the issue, and I was like, oh shit, Tarn's a character!
Yep.
I mean, that was basically my takeaway. Is like I have remarked before on my apathy towards the DJD, and holy shit, Tarn was suddenly a character. And I mean, we don't want to go too far down. I mean, maybe there was the initial concern that there would be a little too much sympathy for the devil here, but that quickly did not become the case as the rest of the issue carried on.
Yeah.
But that was my main takeaway from it. Was suddenly, whoa, one of these guys is a character, and by the end of the thing, only one of them is still a character. But that was really what grabbed me and made me. The only thing I'd been looking forward to as far as this issue went was seeing what Sakamoto would do with it, and the preview got me far more excited for it than I expected to be.
Yeah. Adam, what do you think? Because this obviously was the preview everyone made a lot of noise about it. What were your first thoughts?
I think exactly the same as Chris. It's the first time, it's the first time you get to see what is, not get to see, but you get a glimpse of what's going on in Tarn's head. Before now, all the DJD have just been 5 scary dudes because they're scary, and you see them beat people up, and that's kind of all they've done in their very few sporadic appearances or suggested appearances. It was kind of inevitably coming at some point, and it was early days when we read the preview, I guess, and it kind of gets expanded on as it goes. But it's just insight at this point to me, nothing more.
Yeah, it's I did like the touch of why a brain module is placed in someone's mouth. Because that's a motif that we've seen before, and that was like, yeah, that's pretty nasty. Because someone can literally allowing someone to possibly chomp themselves to death. So the team head back to the peaceful tyranny, and they give thanks to their maker, and then face the one bot, who I can assume puts the fear of Primus into all of them. Their maintenance support bot, Nickel. Now, folks, you've all seen those YouTube vids where the small cat just owns the big hulking dog through a few clinical swipes to the snout. This is the metallized equivalent, and she's not best pleased with her boys. Tarn has apparently allowed Blip's T-Cog to get smooshed up, so it's useless for the recycling. Helix has been neglecting his oral hygiene. Tess, later addressed as he, but would have been delightful if it had been a she, has dulled blades. Tarn tries to mollify everyone. Yes, he's actually trying to calm people down scared of a small bot by suggesting Nickel only gets angry because she cares. The response is a gesture so rude it rocks even Tarn. The now weary troops trape off, Tess gaining a black mark for dissension, for more medicals, after which Tarn has them booked for appraisals, at which they have to bring along their personal development plans. This is The Office, folks. This is bot style The Office. Adam, what do you think of this scene? Because this is... You've seen the tough guys. In one scene, they're kind of taken down a peg.
Well, yeah, it's to the point of ridiculousness, which is just really funny. I actually enjoy this scene a lot. My favourite panel being Helix using his teeny T-Rex arms to yell while swinging the other arms, out wide. That disgusting "you fix Decepticons with those hands" comment. It kind of... it takes the guys from the cold murderers we see at the beginning and in every other appearance.
Yep.
And suddenly they're kind of a little bit funny, and there's this more than meets the eye comedy to them. I don't know if it's misplaced because it flies in the face of what we're supposed to think about them, but it's very more than meets the eye. Tarn calling everyone out for their personal development plans might as well be Magnus, doing it to the guys on the Lost Light. Nickel, it seems... My kind of gut reaction after I got past the laughing of Nickel was it could be, again, any cutesy more than meets the eye character.
Yeah.
And I'm probably going to get in trouble with some fans for saying things like that, but, it's... I can almost picture cosplayers already working on their Nickel costumes. It's... not that that's a bad thing, and none of this is a bad thing, because like I say, I really enjoyed the couple of, there's 3 pages here, and I really enjoyed them all. But it does feel very standard.
Yeah. Chris?
I really like the idea behind the scene, but I'll have to be upfront about it. I don't care for Nickel. I find it difficult to articulate why exactly. To be honest, I wasn't really au fait with the scene at all until someone, I think it was Mikey, compared it to a Texas Chainsaw Massacre or a Hills Have Eyes or some kind of grindhouse thing like that.
Yeah,
where the cannibals they have a family unit, and there's a comparatively ordinary for them day-to-day routine that they go through, but this never sells. She comes up and she's like, "Oh, your mouth is filthy," and it's because he's bitten Blip's head open, But this whole scene, it never sells me on the horrificness of it. It's like, is that cranial fluid? Oh, hilarious! And I'm like, if this wasn't robots, it would be abominably horrific, real horror movie stuff. But nothing about this feels like horror or even horror comedy. When I feel like that is the slant that should be coming off of this. I have to actively think of it in grindhouse terms for the scene to work for me at all. I liked I did have to laugh at the personal development plans, coming in for like an employee review. And I was like, well, I suppose why wouldn't you? They are a kill squad, but they do have a list to work through and a specific way of doing things, and they do have to keep themselves. But to be brutally frank, Nickel feels like she was generated by algorithm for maximum popularity.
Well, it's obviously later on we find out a little bit more about her, which resolves some of the
later.
Yeah.
Yes. I basically, whenever I thought this was the little funny person who was always just perpetually off screen, I pushed back against that idea immediately. I don't know why. I just didn't get with it. And what we find out about her later in the issue kind of brought me back up towards her a little. But I think the part of it, and this is just me, and it's not a good position. It's an entirely arbitrary, subjective position that I can't expect anybody to share or whatever. But I see a lot of, as somebody who's always been very apathetic towards the Decepticon Justice Division, when I see the sheer rabidness of some of the fandom directed towards the Decepticon Justice Division, and a tendency to refer to them as my babies.
Yeah.
Because I see that a lot. So whenever I turn around and I've got who's their mum, basically, who comes in, it's like, wow. It seems like she's a female bot. She is tiny. She is an atypical non-feminine body shape. She is bossing around 5 of the most popular supporting characters in one of the most popular pieces of Transformers fiction. And she is essentially their mum. She's essentially the mum of 5 characters that a lot of people seem to like to think of as their children or their babies already anyway. And I'm like, wow, you ticked every box on that spreadsheet. And I just, the sheer, I'm not saying it was done deliberately, but if it's worked out that way, because of that, I feel a tremendous artificiality around the character. And what can I tell you? It's just me. I can't expect anybody else to share that opinion of her. I can certainly see why people would like her, because of literally everything I just said. But it seems very deliberate and calculated. I think in a way, it kind of rubs me up the wrong way.
I think she's a character that if they do input more time to in future issues, especially with her relationship to the team, as she perceives them at the moment, there's got to be some flexibility. There's going to be a change at some point, and that could be quite interesting to see. At the moment, though, I enjoyed it. I think because it just undermined a lot of what people assumed the DJD would only do if they appeared in a comic. I want to see the DJD appear because they will kill everyone. I want to see the DJD appear because there will be carnage and torture and blah blah blah. And I was almost kind of pleased in a vindictive way, because it was flipping them on their heads. But it all depends what they do with this character, because as you say, it could be a one-note joke, or it could be something a lot deeper down the line.
Well, there was a danger of pushing this whole thing towards jokishness, but I think that the way the issue goes after this scene really just totally writes the course of the book, and I don't hold it against the way that's wind up turning up or anything, but we'll get to that.
Yep. So back to the Peaceful Tyranny and to Tarn's quarters and to Cyruss Appraisal, a pitch-perfect approximation of most corporate management evaluations. It's bland, it's tiresome, it's superfluous to everyone's ideal day. But as Tarn notes, The Decepticon Empire will stand or fall on the strength of its internal admin, and makes the point that the DJD is effectively an extreme performance management tool. It's like HR for the mind. Tess, however, is distracted, and it takes little prompting for him to reveal the cause. It's Voss and Kaon. And we have a James Roberts flashback summary. Okay, seatbelts ready, here we go. 18 months ago, Brainstorm contacted the DJD and informed them where Overlord was. He offered the con up with the proviso that no other crew member be hurt when the DJD turn up to pick up. Tarn's team was actually following this rule. I guess he was not killing, just injuring, until they saw the bot previously known as Deadlock, now Drift. It was a Pringles moment for the DJD. Once you pop a bot, you can't stop popping bots, and carnage ensued. But whilst they ticked off all the bots on the list, or rather the single bot they'd originally gone for, they didn't take advantage of the tech the ship offered them. And after Nickel joined the team, she berated them into going back for the engines. They returned to find the Galactic Council and the Black Bloc Consortia fighting over the same prize. DJD joining actually caused both of those warring sides to team up against them. So whilst Voss and Kaon had chased the council squad down to the planet, Tarn had to retreat. Back in Tarn's quarters, Tess stares down dejectedly and notes that Decepticons don't abandon Decepticons, which causes Tarn to just lose it. He smashes the pad to pieces, shoves his hands into Tess's mouth, wrenches it open, and threatens him. It's more about pride here. He's left troops behind and he knows it. But the commander does something genius. He swiftly turns to grab into a hug almost before Tess can realize it. He's replacing the threat with support, fear with avuncular concern. And he explains gently that he'd ordered the ship back to Ofsted to find his missing teammates. He's interrupted by Halex, who announces they've already been found, and alive, and teleported back. And one of them is carrying a nuclear bomb in the form of a book. It's Towards Peace, Megatron's original statement of intent, now amended to show the bot himself, with Bumblebee's insignia across his chest. Whew. Chris, he never does flashbacks by half, does he? Does this all fit? Does this all tie in perfectly with what we've seen before?
Seems to. I have to operate on the assumption that Brainstorm was not able to descramble Overlord's energy signature right away, because, back in issue 8, was it, when they were scanning for Overlord's signature?
Yep.
And they had no location, but so you would have to assume that came afterwards. But beyond that, I was quite happy to see that Brainstorm legitimately was the one who tipped them off, because you know what? Sometimes it's okay to take things in more than meets the eye at face value, and not everything is a huge conspiracy fandom. They said it was Brainstorm, and hey, look, it was Brainstorm. Wasted effort. That's me being bitter again, though. I need to stop focusing on my reaction to fandom with this issue.
Come back to us, Chris. Come back. You can do it.
Yeah, besides that, now everything seems to line up pretty well. I figured whenever we saw the preview game that what we were seeing took place after they were separated from Kaon and Voss and before they got hooked back up with them. I figured that would be the length of the issue, though. I didn't think they would be joined back up again by the end of the issue, but obviously that makes for a far more interesting story.
Nice. And Adam, what do you think of it all?
Yeah, it's fine. It fills in the gaps nicely. I guess my only sort of 2 extra takeaways were the fact that Brainstorm is very clear that he doesn't want anyone else on the Lost Light harmed.
Yeah.
Lending more to our sort of previous observations about, is he really a Decepticon? Really? Or is there more to it? And the other thing is, why would Nickel know about the quantum engines and what they are? And why does she want to go back for them?
Well, anybody would know what the quantum engine is. I mean, quantum engines, it's not that they didn't exist before or anything, but they just weren't as advanced as the Lost Lights.
And so, it might be the case as well that, that, let's face it, with the sort of structure that they have and the attention to detail, that they would have scanned all the information about the Lost Light as they were approaching it.
Possibly.
The the implication is fairly solidly, of course, that as we'll find out about Nickel later on, they didn't have her on the team at the time, and it was only after they actually added her and told and maybe telling her about what they've been up to lately, she went, "You left what?" and insisted that they go back for them.
Possibly. It's one of those things you kind of, with more than meets the eye, it's like a very deliberate thing to write in.
I did like as well the extra touches, Drift once again trying to protect Ratchet, building on their relationship, and also this idea that there are other organizations out there who are looking to take down Cybertronians, who don't like Cybertronians. And so there could be more threats out there just than, it's not baddie Decepticon of the week or month or year. There could be external elements coming into this as well. And I like the idea of this Black Bloc Consortia. I think of them as some sort of mafia.
They've really got my interest because we've seen the Council enough times now. We know their deal. I think that's supposed to be Captain Kagard in that flashback because he's wearing a funny hat.
Yep.
But we know nothing about the Black Bloc Consortia except that they exist. We don't know what their deal is at all. And I'm looking forward to just when that comes to pass, whenever that may be. It's hard to know, but
I think one of the praises of the artwork in this issue is that you're so focused on the story with everything going on that the artwork is doing a good job. I mean, there's a couple of moments where bots get a little bit blocky, and there's a couple of scaling issues, but everything is nice and solid. The colors as well, and I really love some of the extra colors that are put into moments like when Tarn finds out that Megatron has defected. And it's just that beautiful work on the eyes, that kind of just furious anger and shock. It's a nice little touch, really sells it.
Joanna just really keeps more than meets the eye. I mean, Sakamoto's done an incredible job of just feeling like. I mean, when I saw the preview, I did not realize at first that it wasn't Alex, but Joanna's doing an incredible job of just helping to maintain the book's visual consistency. What was that issue we were? It was last issue, was it? Or it was last issue where they reprinted some Josh colored pages.
Yes, yeah,
and she just matched the whole thing superbly in such a way that you would never know that they were taken from another source. Yeah, she's the real the silent partner doesn't seem like the right term, but it's like Alex and James are always out there, always their names are always flung around. They're the ones that are always out there really, really interacting with fans on Twitter and everything. And Joanna is, she's there too, but she always feels like she's the comparatively silent partner, but she is her contribution to this book cannot be overstated.
Absolutely. Right, so the next page features Tarn alone in the snowy wastes of Messetine, and he's listening to Megatron's proclamation. Halfway through the speech, Tarn takes off his faceplate, whether it's through a feeling of suffocation or to stare at the Decepticon insignia that he's worn during his crusade, or a blatant tease. It's a nice little touch there with the snow running over the text, these little moments. But this is a quiet moment for him. It's allowing the reader to know that Tarn is considering a response. It's not saying how he reacts to it. It's just giving him the amount of time that you would expect him to react, because this is a big moment for him, which is nice. But then we jump down underground 2 miles below the surface to a base. Looks like the DJD have shacked up here. And Nickel and a few of the team talk shop while Tarn is being refueled. It's clearly not a painless process, but then again, this is no ordinary fuel. This is nuke. Ray! Robocop 2 reference. As Helex explains, the crystals in the mine were subject to a temporal energy burst. Thank you, Mr. Brainstorm. And this mutated the fuel into something far more powerful. Now, Tarn is taking his time in this kind of fueling bath, and his green spark, starts to contort, and Tarn sees a vision, chunks of his past. And we see a young Skids with a tattoo that looks more like a sort of badly placed head mic, and Tarn's rebuilding a connection to Megs. And
those tattoos have never looked good. I mean, there was something that was called for the script, and we've seen them on a couple of characters, and we've seen it on young Skids before, but they've no one has really managed to make them look convincing or good, because they just, I think the idea of having the Matrix tattooed under your eye, it's too, detailed an image or something for an artist. The way the kind of the line of More Than Meets the Eye runs artistically, no one's ever made those look good.
Funny enough, if they'd added it above the eye, it probably would have worked.
Maybe. But it's no surprise to see Tarn with a memory of Skids as well, because we've discovered this issue that, as many people had figured out already, that the Empyrean Suite is one of the pieces of music that Tarn plays, and we've heard several times in the course of More Than Meets the Eye that there's a sinister connotation to that music, so now we know that's what the sinister connotation is, and also that way back again in issue 8, it was the first issue with the DJD, or was it issue 7 even, that Chrome Dome found this piece of music running through Skids' head. So we know Skids has had some kind of run-in or connection with the DJD, and so it's not really any surprise to see him here just reasserting that little fact. Because I mean, the mystery of Skids is something that has just not gone mentioned in, goodness, over a year now at this stage.
Yeah.
And a half, more than a year and a half at this point, because they tied up the mystery of his amnesia, but the fact was that like the trauma of the amnesia had blocked out all of his previous memories as well, instead of just the special ops related ones, and we still, that just hasn't even been mentioned, so we still need to come back to that. Obviously that's hanging over us.
The creatures in the bottom
look a bit like Garnock, don't they?
Yeah, I was going to say, do you think that's real, or is that something more fantastical?
Oh, well, I don't know. Given what we hear them say about organic life and everything, it could be something. Or maybe this was some sort of inciting incident in Tarn's past that was part of, what prompted him to sign up, or who knows? I mean, I thought, and I think a lot of people thought that this might be the Tarn unmasking issue.
Yeah.
After the issue a couple of months ago that was so drowned in hints that he was Roller as to make me not believe that he is. Not that I ever believed it in the first place. I thought that they might just be cutting to the chase with it, but no, they don't go that way.
That's good. I'm looking forward to them announce someone completely different, and there to be a perfectly obvious explanation if you reread every issue, and everyone's missed it.
See, we're at a point now where there are 3 major notable characters who existed in the past, but who have gone. Well, there's 2 characters who have actively disappeared under mysterious circumstances, and that's Dominus Ambus and Terminus.
Yep.
And Roller. Well, since the first part of Elegant Chaos, Roller now is his fate is now mysterious. But before that, when people were starting to come out, the only reason was because he wasn't around anymore, and he was obviously a character who had very famous friends. So whatever happened to this guy that the famous people knew was a question, but it was never suggested that he disappeared under mysterious circumstances the way Terminus and Dominus had been implied to be. So I mean, those are our top 3 big notable candidates from More Than Meets the Eye so far. But whether it'll turn out to be any one of them, who knows?
True. The final part of his hallucination is hallucination. He slowly comes to it, and he sees Nickel pressed. It's either a hallucination of Nickel from the past when they first met, or it's her peering inside the tube to check on him.
Oh, pretty sure that's what it is.
But it is something that reaches out to Tarn. He connects to it, and he comes back online. He reaches out to Nickel in turn, and that reach turns into a punch, shattering the outside of the chamber, and he falls free, informing all that there's been a change of plan. And the next thing we see is the tyranny approaching a war world, proclaiming its con allegiance proudly on its front. It seems that the team are there to see Death Sarus. The Sarus is an interesting character. He's
well, hang on.
Oh, go on. Yeah, go for it.
Death Sarus. I have stuff to say about that, which is that I was waiting to see if you were going to go back to it, but we got to go right back to the fueling chamber scene here, because we've stepped over a very large part of the story, which is that whether deliberately or passively, Tarn has just tried to kill himself. Tarn he may not have stepped into that pod with the deliberate intention of doing so, but he has pushed himself to lethal overdose levels on the nuke, and that's why the life flashes before his eyes. And the point of Nickel representing something is he opens his eyes and he sees Nickel, and it's not what he sees is something that existed already, which is her, which is to say, and again, this is the kind of a thing where it's not really on the page. She's just presented as this cute little, oh, isn't it hilarious that she can put these killing machines in? Yeah, this is someone who was presented with kill all organics, dedicate yourself to an ideal above all else, and murder anybody who steps away from it, and said, yeah, that sounds brilliant, sign me up for that. She's as much a monster as the rest of them. She is immersed in this ideal as much as that, and that is just, it's really something that, in as much as the character expressing it in any way, is just not on the page of the comic. And it's when Tarn opens his eyes when he's in the pod looking for something meaningful, and he sees her, and she realizes that that's what she represents. She represents someone from another world, someone who was entirely separate from the war, but someone who has been touched by the Decepticon ideal, wholly independent of that. She's seen the cruelties that Megatron, I'll not say the cruelties Megatron fought against, because obviously Cybertronians dug that hole for themselves that turned the rest of the galaxy against them in many ways. But she's somebody who came to these conclusions and had these feelings independent of the war and independent of Megatron, and that to Tarn is proof that the cause is bigger than Megatron is, and that's the rallying point it's not simply Nickel, it's the idea that Nickel represents, which is that the cause is greater than OneBot, and whether Megatron is defected or not, the cause does not change.
Nice. Now, through some crew discussion, we learn that the Sarus is a terraformer. He's creating mini Cybertrons out of various worlds. The war world here wasn't his anymore, seeming to suggest that maybe he'd created it and stolen it back, or some other complicated thing. Or maybe when he'd left it, Tarn still believes that all that property is Megatron's and he shouldn't be using it. But he had broken a level 5 grade infraction, that of aggravated theft. He'd split from the main con army, but not apparently all their ideals. And that wasn't really why Tarn is here. He's not here to threaten him. He's not here to take him down. He's here to discuss with him some sort of issue. As they close in on the ship, they note that the Sarus has a crew of about 500. And they then hear as well pick up the mindless chatter of their inter-Decepticon radio, which is crazy, because who on earth would spend time listening to folk debating and arguing about nitpicking points of Cybertronians? That would be insane. But within his base, the Sarus takes note of the DJD's approach evenly. He has a knowledge of the bot Tarn, and notes that Tarn is a voracious consumer: music, energon, T-cogs, but he's never had much of an appetite for waiting. Just at this point, there's a couple of things that seem to be kind of points made here. One is that lots of people seem to know that Tarn is hiding behind a mask, or has a mask.
This is the question, really, is that it's kind of, it's made me wonder, like, is it the Senator Shockwave play again, where actually it's not a mystery at all and everybody actually already knows? It's common knowledge amongst Cybertronians who he actually is, in the same way that everybody knew who that senator was. It's just that the real name has never been used in a story, so that we as an audience can be surprised when we find out.
Yeah. And maybe the original face is still underneath, but it's... Though I don't see why taking off the mask would do anything. I mean, that's why would you go up to Shockwave and say, take off the front? Even if the original face were there, the attitude is still the same.
It's a funny one when you're dealing with like Transformers to, masks, face plates, reformatted bodies, different appearances. It's yeah, sure, this is a removable mask, but what's the difference from Prime taking his faceplate on and off when he feels like it? It's there's not a great deal really, to be honest with you. But obviously there's a poetic, artistic side to it of it's a mask and he's wearing something and but it is harder with Transformers as opposed to writing a comic about human characters who would be doing perhaps the same thing.
Because we've only ever seen the front of the mask. We've not seen the underside. So I believe. So I'm hoping that we're not going to see the underside of it and it's got an Autobot insignia on it, which would then be the flip of Brainstorms. But,
oh God.
Worst point ever. Never do that again on a podcast. Okay, so from Deathsaurus's reaction to the oncoming ship and the fact that he's talking about time being a voracious consumer, I'm thinking, I thought when I read this that maybe a bribe is on the cards. Maybe these two know each other, or at least have some sort of past relationship, a professional relationship. And the two leaders meet. And the first thing Sarus does is plop a box of merch, a large yellow crate, straight into the DJD leader's hands. The initial discussion is very polite between the two, but it's the reversal of the expected. Tarn isn't accusing or preaching. He's being polite, he's being respectful, wishing only to talk. It's Deathsaurus who's the one questioning Tarn's loyalty, noting wryly that he'd half expected the DJD to be wandering around the galaxy wearing an Autobot mask and apologizing to everyone on Megatron's behalf.
Oh, I got a good laugh out of that one.
That would be fantastic. Just wandering up to the employees of Shermadam. Terribly sorry. Didn't mean to do that.
We're sorry. We're sorry. BP style. That episode. So.
As Tarn pushes his request further, Desaurus delicately asks Tarn to move backwards. It's so quick. It's effortlessly done by the artist as well, conveying how quickly this all switches. Caught completely off balance by the request, Tarn takes seconds to see the situation for what it is. He's suddenly standing in an open space, holding a crate. He looks down, and on the side of the crate facing him, there's one word. Explosives. Transformers goes Looney Tunes, as a single shot is made, and Tarn is lucky that he didn't lose his arms in a massive blast. And Sarus takes no time at all to pounce on the DJD leader in earnest, assuming that Tarn was here to judge him, because apparently the DJD have done this to many of his troops. They have taken them down just for following him. After the first scene of this issue, maybe Tarn viewed them all as a cult of personality. But Tarn is swift to fight back, all the while regretting his image as the weaponized speaker, because he is fighting back, but with restraint. He's merely firing warning shots. He still wants to talk. The rest of the DJD, by the way, are doing nothing. They're stuck between the fear of breaking orders and the fear of this gamble not working out in their favor. It's difficult for Tarn. He's unable to explain himself to Desaurus, and then the Con Renegade actually switches off his audio. So Tarn pulls out his key part of plan, and that is that everyone else might have muted their audio to protect themselves from his sonics. But he'd noticed the Inter-Decepticon radio network, and his team had hacked it. Suddenly his voice is now washing through every crew member, dropping them to their knees. And at this point, Tarn decides to remind everyone that he could drop his tone, but instead calmly starts to celebrate the Decepticon cause and their leader Megatron's glorious role in propelling them to power, overthrowing the Senate, emancipating the manual classes. Nothing was beyond him, as Tarn goes on. However, Megatron eventually looked further afield and sought to crush the bias that organic races throughout the galaxy apparently held for their own type, over the Cybertronians. The Autobots sought only to solve a rebellion within their race, but Tarn argues that Megatron was seeking to enhance and secure the entire race, the entire planet, and to that end, he states that that is the real Decepticon cause. This cause is now bigger than any bot, bigger than Tarn, bigger than the DJD, and certainly bigger than Megatron himself. And then Sarus and the reader is kind of reintroduced to Nickel. This is Nickel. She's our newest recruit and the last of her kind. she's a colonist, one of thousands born of Prion, a titan who left Cybertron during the ancient times. We found her days after an attack wiped out her colony. Was it the Autobots? Nope. It was one of these galactic powers. It was the Black Bloc Consortia. They and the Council apparently moving against the Cybertronians in their weakened state and seeking to take the race down. Tarn has revealed all of this and now reaches out. He asks that Sarus to join with him, and Sarus states there are 2 catches. He seems quite up for it. All you have to do, immunity for everyone here. Oh, and Tarn, you must kill your crew. You must balance the scales. Tarn had killed plenty of his. Tarn pomps out straight away. No way. And this, it turns out, is a final test, because Sarus, his quality as a leader that made him lead the Decepticon cause was not any of the more base elements that you see in some of these renegades. He was not overly brutal that we know of. He was not challenging Megatron's rule that we know of. He simply wanted better treatment of his crew, his team, his army. They agreed to the union, though Sarus does note the words, "I could never throw my weight behind a leader," which implies he's actually throwing his weight behind Tarn and allowing Tarn to be in charge. And we get a nice comment as well from Sarus that says the value he places on his troops is the real reason. So again, this is another Decepticon that has honourable qualities. So Tarn has a choice. What is his target? He is the leader. He dictates the course from here on in. And as he says, the Decepticon Empire will stand or fall on the strength of its internal administration. Before we attack the organics, there is some housekeeping to attend to. By his actions, Megatron has put himself on the list. In fact, as of right now, he is the list. What's more, if the end of Towards Peace is to be believed, he's somehow managed to ally himself with a ship full of Autobots I thought we'd eliminated. Yep, he's on a direct course with the Lost Light. It looks like they need to take down Megatron and the Lost Light crew, Part 2. And Sarus exclaims, "Wow, let battle be joined, eh?" And Tarn states, "No, this is more than a battle, Sarus. We are going to war." We end up with the 2 teams aligned and looking pretty formidable. Okay, chaps, hell of a chunk of stuff. Apologies. Starting off with Nickel. So Nickel's, we found out that, the kind of origins of another one of the ancient Cybertronians, or one of the key Cybertronians in the past. But we're also hearing as well about more kind of evidence that these galactic powers are moving against Cybertronians.
Yeah, I mean, we've really just so far seen them reacting to our cast's intrusion into their circles, but now we have this idea that they are actually actively out there looking to exterminate them.
Which is,
the scope is getting broader.
And they as well are being raised in threat level, which is refreshing, really, because we're still seeing, you see this in a lot of stuff, including like the recent Drift mini, where it's the poor organics trying to avoid being crushed under the feet of the Cybertronians. Whereas in fact it's refreshing to know that there are races out there that will quite happily pound them into dust. Adam, what do you think of this relationship as well between sort of Nickel and Tarn? Tarn has saved Nickel, and at the same time as well, it's him telling her about the Decepticon cause, and the act of rescuing her has somehow reminded him of his duty.
Well, he's rescued her before he's got the news of Megatron. So, it's I don't think it's about him, being reminded of his duty. It might be reinforced at this point, but I think it does all hark back to, what he's saying about the Decepticon ideal. Megatron's original vision and the early stages of the war, and obviously what eventually is Tarn's takeaway from this issue. That there's a bigger picture here than just doing Decepticon internal affairs. It's actually for a purpose. And yeah, you're right. Nickel being on the ship right now in front of Sarus is, an embodiment of that. It's somebody who, they can rally around as a fellow Decepticon or Cybertronian who's, been ground down by the fleshies.
Yeah. To me, it almost feels as well like because of the incident with Nickel that Tarn had given up. Not given up, but he'd moved maybe beyond just following Megatron's doctrine into following the Decepticon doctrine before he found out the information. And that was the reason why he was able to get over it.
Yeah, I think that's definitely like a key part of this whole issue. Is he's now got a different... Well, he always had this purpose, but I think it's now driven to the fore. And, it's certainly getting past the Megatron thing, which, to be honest with you, is what this entire issue is about. I think I expected the DJD's reaction to Megatron defecting to be as much as, we'd have a regular issue of More Than Meets the Eye, and the final panel would be them busting through the shuttle bay doors or something. But instead we've effectively got a whole single issue devoted to it.
Chris, nice to have another con leader. It's nice to have a seemingly sane con leader and somebody who's looking out for his troops.
Yes, I think Defi comes off very well in this. Obviously, I think people like me and people who share my concerns are not widespread, but there are plenty of us who are a little concerned with the portrayal of Japanese characters in Western media, where writers do have something of a tendency, and I'm not just talking about Roberts, Barbara's done it too, and it's happened in a lot of the 3H stuff as well, where there is something of a tendency to outright ignore their original characterization because they are seen unfairly as blank slates because they are from Japan, they are not from America. Nobody has any pre-exist, or they did a statistically insignificant number of Western readers have pre-existing connections and attachments to those characters, and they seem more than most Western characters. They seem to be treated as free to be reinterpreted. In Starsaber being the key example, Metalhawk being a colossal douchebag being another, although more of Metalhawk's a group of people who went off and weren't part of the war is kind of part of it as well. And there was there was something concerned that Sarus might come off that way. And his depiction here doesn't really owe anything to the Victory cartoon, but it does, whether it owes it or not, or whether it's just a coincidence, but it does sync up quite nicely with the Victory manga, because obviously the Victory manga ended with the revelation that Sarus was only doing what he was doing. He was only being a bad guy. He was only stealing energy. The Victory storyline in the manga only ever happened because Sarus was trying to steal enough energy to keep his fortress running, to keep the Decepticons' wives, children, and families safe.
Wow.
And when that gets found out at the end of the storyline, Starsaber and Sarus shake hands and decide to build a better future together. But it does seem to owe a little something to it, where he does genuinely value those around him and look after them.
Very nice.
Yeah, I didn't know it. I've never watched, the Victory cartoon. So this is really my first exposure to Sarus and anything other than looking at pictures of the toy or having seen it once or twice. Around someone else's house. But he definitely comes across as a bit more interesting than the average, Decepticon, super powerful leader type. The most recent example being
Gigatron.
Drift. Yeah, Gigatron in Drift, Empire of Stone, who was generic big dude 101. Yeah.
Though I will say, if Mr. Roberts is listening, grit. Just saying. It's nice to see as well that the Autobots are portrayed here as it's not the case that they were fighting for freedom. It's that they were fighting for just to quell a small issue, a small rebellion, almost and seen maybe as a class rebellion. Whereas the cons and Tarn now is holding himself up to the ideal that he's doing something far more important for the entire planet. And this idea with the Decepticons that they're trying to find Cybertronian's place in the galaxy, it does give them an element of greyness when it comes to the way they act, because they're trying to protect their race. And the only other thing I was going to ask you guys as well is in terms of a team up between these two before we hit the final page and the big mash. And Chris, I am going to ask you how many of those people you recognise. I know. I'm sorry, but in terms of a team up where one con leader is saying to Tan, right, here are my troops, I will follow you. We've got ourselves a bit of an army here. Are we looking at the start of something bigger? Do you think this will expand out? Will this now be a main Decepticon threat? Or is this going to be one of the smaller groups that Roberts keeps sort of floating around in the background?
Well, I think we won't see them again for a while, but I'm operating on the assumption that the Dying of the Light is going to be the name for the multi-part season finale. So, I mean, obviously, the arrival of the DJD, that's got to be the big end of season blowout.
So, tears aplenty. Okay. Final page, then. Off you go, Chris.
Must I? Really? I have spent...
just on this shit, just for the couple that immediately stand out.
Oh, no, I can do all of them except one.
Oh, foolish Adam.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's no blaming them. Like the whole Dino Force is there from Victory. Right? All of Death Sarus's troops from the Victory cartoon are here. The whole Dino Force is here. The whole Breast Force is here, except for Hellbat, because Hellbat was busy over in Empire of Stone, and Hellbat's been replaced with Death Cobra, who was his one episode replacement from the Victory cartoon. Then up in the top left, the guy with the little blue guy. That is a generic Decepticon Micromaster who fell into a molten stream in one episode of Victory. Next to that is King Solon, who was a mecha for Death Sarus's adopted human son in the Victory manga. On the right of that is a proposed Decepticon retool of Vroom, Mega Pretender Vroom, who would have been in the Victory toy line, but who never got made and only appeared in Victory concept artwork. We have no idea who that is to the right of him. I haven't figured it out yet, but it's driving me fucking batty because I'm convinced I know it. Browning from Master Force is standing on his shoulder. And down in the bottom right, that purple guy is the prototype version of Great Shot, who was in the same piece of concept artwork that Vroom was in, who has been given the colors of the Brave toy Shadow Maru, who was a redeco of Great Shot. The end.
Fantastic.
Hours of fucking work. Pardon my quote. I have gone mad with this shit today. Those two guys, it was Escargon on the TF Wiki was able to identify Vroom. We're still struggling over the fella next to him, but the other guys' DVDs came out, mangas came out. Because the point of commonality on everything, except for Browning for whatever reason, is Victory.
Yeah.
You know, it's a generic from Victory, it's from the Victory manga, it's from Victory concept art, the rest of them are his troops from Victory. If you know the identity of the guy in the middle, send your answers on a stamped, self-addressed envelope.
Just give us a shout on the Facebook page.
Oh, I mean, of course, there's also Blue Bacchus as well.
Yes.
There as well. But he's actually mentioned by name. And he was in one episode of the Victory cartoon.
Awesome. So on that fun fact-filled note, successful issue. It deals with the DJD. Adam, what do you think? In terms of the artwork and coloring for this issue? Because we've talked about the choice of artists, etc., and we have mentioned the coloring choices at certain points and how effective. But overall, how is the issue for you art-wise?
I think it's absolutely fine, to be honest with you. There's a couple of panels where I think the sequence of storytelling had a few missteps. Nothing horrendous, nothing that made my head spin, but I had to sort of just double read a couple of panels to make sure what was happening was matching to the either the descriptive or the speech bubbles or what was being implied as happening.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought it was really good. Some of the characters look a bit blocky sometimes and static, but the colours are fabulous.
Yeah.
Joanna pulls it all together. I think we all agree on that, and she's always the sort of 5 out of 5 superstar of this book, consistency wise. But the art's great, to be honest with you. No problem. So I was perfectly happy with it, and I'd be happy to have the same artist again.
Cool. Chris?
Yes, absolutely. Same here. I was really looking forward to it. I think he just really nailed it. There's a little all these Japanese characters appearing as well just adds sort of a nice tonal cultural mashup. Nothing jumped out at me as being odd or difficult to read in any way.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, more please, you know, any room you have for him to put in one comics, yes, please, absolutely.
Yeah.
As I said at the start, you know, if you're someone who doesn't feel they can support his artwork, that's your choice. But I can, and I'm happy to.
Nice. And Chris, overall, the story in this issue, the way they tackled them, and what would you give it as a vote out of 5?
Well, first of all, as I said, I was worried about sympathy for the devil off the preview, even though my immediate reaction was, oh shit, Tarn's a character. I was like, oh, but how far are they going to go with this? And I just really love the payoff at the end, which is Tarn essentially jumping through hoops, might be being a little harsh on his thought process, but absolutely reaffirming his dedication to murdering everything. There is no sympathy here. You know, we see somebody have a crisis of faith, nearly top themselves as a consequence of it, and then justify to themselves a way to get out of bed and continue murdering every day. There is still no question that these guys are unrepentant. Is zealot the right word? I suppose, yeah, it's dedicating yourself to an ideal. And I was really happy with the way that paid off. Still waiting for the rest of the cast to become characters at any stage.
Yep.
I still can't remember which one is Helex and which one is Sarus.
Nobody can.
Yeah, no. I have the device now. Helex is the one without the X on his face. Yes. Tumblr offered that one up to me whenever I was bemoaning my inability.
Okay.
Because other than that, I was like stuck trying to like think Sarus. He's got them blades. Sarus. More like tears your arse. No, yeah, that was the best I got. So the X thing will help me to remember which one is which. Yes, I mean there's some funny moments with it. I do like the rude gesture scene and everything. I'm afraid I don't really care for Nickel, but I like what she represents and how she's used to preserve the monstrousness of the characters.
Yeah.
Even though like I feel that the character's own belief is more told, not shown. You know, John says, no, yeah, well, she totally believes. Check her out here. Just stand there quietly, love, and just be a prop in my story. So I'm not ruling the character out here because this is more than meets the freaking eye. But right now I'm pretty cold on the character. But you know, I'm not saying I wouldn't, you know, plonk down money to see her and Tailgate have a slap fight.
Absolutely.
Initial excitement tempered by some concerns, worsened by a dislike of the new character introduced. That's then it really just pulls it back at the end whenever it's like, no, you know what? Despite the fun elements and the normalizing elements of what we've seen of the characters, it reaffirms at the very end that these guys are sociopaths and killers and monsters, and they are dedicated to that more than they are dedicated to doing it in a person's name. And excuse me, and Death Sarth gets a good showing as well. So altogether, I was very satisfied with the way it pulled itself off.
Cool.
I mean, and it's full of all those little communist and Marxist references. Again, all the chapter titles and the story itself are all Russian words and politically related things and Marxist and communist movements that are all part of the communist and Marxist allegories that Roberts has been weaving into the story of the Decepticons' rise, which in many ways, like Tarn's zealotry embodies. So I some opening concerns that the issue did well to pull back on.
Cool.
Think I'll lean to it's either a 3.5 or a 4. I think I'm leaning to a 3.5.
Okay. Adam, your thoughts?
I enjoyed the issue as a whole. There was a few things I wasn't an instant fan of. I think if nothing else, I give James Roberts credit for telling this story, because, like I say, my kind of gut feeling and anticipation was this wouldn't be told. And before reading this, I probably thought it didn't need to be told. Like, Tom and the DJD find out Megatron's an Autobot, react badly, go after Megatron.
Yeah.
I guess that's kind of actually what this issue is, and it takes a lot of pages to tell that.
Yeah.
Let's go get Megatron on the Lost Light. However, you get the insight in, like Chris says, you get the insight into the devil or the monster that is Tarn, and a little bit of the rest of the DJD, but they're still fairly nothing characters. But you get a bit of humour, which is nice. It's a good issue. So thumbs up from me. I'm a little bit torn on the score. I would have to give it a 4 out of 5 because I think I did enjoy it that much.
From my point of view, a great issue, an issue that just gives us the other side of the coin. It gives us the DJD, someone that many people, let's face it, have become quite fixated on, and it's broken them down and reassembled them so that there is now DJD with added character. It's not much, but it's in there, and we have more of a drive for Tarn doing what he does. The fact that he's then brought on extra crew, and let's face it, there's Sarus, a character who's probably going to play a pivotal part in at least one more battle, and gives us a little bit of background on him. It's showing another intelligent Decepticon leader. It's showing us cons who have a cause, who believe that they have the right to protect themselves by all means necessary. And unfortunately, when you push that a little bit far in terms of DJD, you have these villains who believe in what they're doing. They're not just kind of lazy layabouts. They're not bullies. They're doing it for a cause, which makes them all the more horrific. In terms of Nickel, I think she's being set up as a character who might well die in a quite horrible way at the hands of an Autobot. And I think that will just enrage Tarn. I just love the idea that this bot that has seen most of her race wiped out by a third party is now, killed off completely by, of all things, an Autobot.
I'm not saying, incidentally, that Nickel is not justified in feeling the way she does after what she's seen. So when I go so far as to call her a monster on the same level as the DJD, that might be going a little far, because she has lived through some stuff that they really haven't. I mean, that we know of. We're not really aware of any major Cybertronian versus organic slaughters, where major quantities of lives have been claimed by the consortia or the council before this or anything. But
I guess the other thing, sorry, Chris, to bear in mind is just the time lapse, because we've seen in the RID ongoing, which is not RID anymore, but in Windblade, that Windblade societies evolved pretty differently to. In the I don't know, millions of years or whatever it actually supposed to have been since they left. So we don't know kind of what society that Nickel came from. It might not have been what we know.
So she has reasons for feeling the way she does, but she's probably, I'm not saying she could ever take a life with her own hands as well, I suppose. I mean, that's the thing. But she still signs up for the notion of murder for all.
Well, also as well,
it's an interesting.
We're seeing her with her saviors, we're seeing, she talks about the mission. So there's still an element of how much does she know about the bigger picture? And does she think that she is just allied with a bunch of guys who are, ruggedly enforcing Cybertron's place in the universe? Is she?
But when she can recognize whenever Helex has brain juice between his teeth, so she knows what they're out there doing.
That's true, yeah.
I guess it's like, you were right, Chris, saying like a slap fight with Tailgate, because it's, from a different point of view, it's not a far off tale. Tailgate wasn't an Autobot and wanted to join the Autobots and learnt the Autobot code, and at the same time, if I remember rightly, we got the whole story about how Decepticons get their badge from, I can't remember, Chris, you'll know, won't you? There was something about their rite of initiation.
Yeah, they make it from part spark casing or something.
So, she's clearly done all that, because the DJD is, if anyone are going to make you do that stuff.
Yeah. Well, I just really thought slap fight, because it'd be like the Transformer equivalent of midget wrestling or something. It'd just be really cute.
It needs to happen.
It'd be like the end of Die Hard, when the limo driver punches the nerdy tech guy. And that's the only fight they have. Everyone else is killing themselves with guns and explosions, and the two quieter characters just slap each other around a bit. Oh, and I should add, it's a 4 from me, because it's a good job. It sets up a nice viable threat that I'm now looking forward to encountering the Lost Light far more than I was before this issue. It throws up lots of kind of spins and turns, and hopefully, folks out there, you will enjoy the comic for what it is, a comic, and hopefully all the creatives involved will continue on to do many more Transformer comics. So, lads, thank you very much for guiding me through my first major issue of one of the two main comics in what's probably about a year and a half.
Has it been that long?
I think it has. I've been consigned to mini-series tie-ins and crossovers.
Well, we're far more welcoming here than on that.
Well, then again, you don't have any Angry Birds, so you lose points for that. So
no Angry Birds and no Gigatron.
Well, there's good things in that, I can assure you. But anyway, thank you so much for coming on today, guys. It's much appreciated. And to you guys at home, come back and see us soon. We got an awful lot of Transformers coming up, and I believe the next one will be myself reciting the glory, which is the final release of the next Transformers G.I. Joe issue.
I used to think More Than Meets the Eye was a book that it was hard to write a tight synopsis for, and then that came along.
My eyes are bleeding just writing the most basic of notes.
It's a comparatively recent development, but it's really just like the last 2 issues, where it's like sometimes you can't go half a page without the scene jumping away, and it's like, well, I mean, I'm loving it. There's so much insanity in it. I'm just loving it. It's moved so far beyond just being Jack Kirby does Transformers to being something else entirely, something completely transcendental. But it's a bastard to write a summary of in anything that's not a series of 1-sentence paragraphs.
So join me for that as I slowly go mad as I try and just condense an entire issue into half an hour.
Cobra, la 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 la.
Until then, folks, have a good one, and we'll see you again on another issue of the Underbase. Take care. Goodbye.
Bye bye.
Underbase complete. Cease transmission.